Full Ahead, the podcast about ships and shipping, with Alistair Eagles and Nigel Thompson.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the Full Ahead podcast. I'm Nigel Thompson, a journalist with an interest in ships.
And I'm Alistair Eagles, someone who used to do some bits and bobs in the shipping industry. And today we've got something completely different. The last two episodes have focused very much on technology, on the environment, on fuel saving. And we want to get back to our love of ships. So today we're going to talk to a guy called Mike Louagie. And Mike Louagie is a man who's made a whole career out of taking photographs.
Yeah, we've taken a few pictures of ships, haven't we, in our time, and videos as well. And the pictures have been okay, but Mike's take it to a different level. When we share some pictures, as we will do on our social media channels, you'll see exactly what we mean. We talk about the Arctic, we're talking about state-of-the-art ferries, cruises, and everything in between.
And how do you go from an interest in ships and an interest in photography to making it your living? It's your dream, isn't it? To turn your hobby into your career and how you make your money. So it's going to be interesting to catch up with Mike, see what he's doing, learn all about photography, learn all about his love of ships. And yeah, really looking forward to talking to him.
This is Full Ahead.
So Mike, just casting kind of your time back to when you were a child, when you were young, where did this interest in ships and photography come from?
Well, I was born in Ostend, so it was normal for me to see ships. We had a naval base, we had the ferries to Dover. So for me, it was an everyday thing to see ships. So I was playing on the beach, I saw the ships coming in and out. And also at the age of 7, instead of playing football, my parents sent me to a sailing camp. So I learned to sail on an Optimist, which is a very small sailing boat. And so that quickly became one of my first passions, to be on the water as a sport. And then at the age of 12, I got a camera as a present from my grandfather. And so I developed photography. And I remember a couple of years later at school, there was a competition, and the teacher, so he was also a photo addict, and he organized a competition, and I won the first prize. So that really put the seed to, okay, I'm good in that, in photography. And because I was sailing more and more not on small yachts, but on really large yachts, large, let's say 35 foot, I spent all my holidays with a family on the south coast of England for many, many years. And there I saw the QE2 and the Canberra, and then the warships in Portsmouth. And I started to photograph these ships. And I decided that, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to become a photographer specialized in ships. And in fact, there was one family that inspired me, and that was Beacon of Cowes, the famous photographers of the Isle of Wight, who were famous because of their fantastic sailing pictures of, I think they are now at the 5th generation. But that's really what I said. I want to do yachting photography. That never happened. My first customers were the ferry companies and not the yachts. But that's how I got into the maritime photography. And
what age did you kind of sell your first photograph? I mean, what age were you? And was that just something on the side, or was that an actual career at that point?
Actually, so my father wanted me to become an engineer. So I first did some engineering studies, which I really did not like, but they are useful. And then later on, I said, yeah, but I really want to become a photographer. And my parents say, yeah, but you need to have a degree, a higher degree. So they sent me to Brussels, to the art school. And that was 4 years, minimum 4 years. I took a bit longer. So, and then I had to do my military service. So eventually I started at the age of 25 or 26 to become a freelance photographer.
And how competitive is it? Because I understand from working in the media that that there is quite a kind of quite a cutthroat competition when it comes to getting pictures in all walks of life, whether it's industrial photography or people photography, for arts, magazines, things like that. It is quite a tough job to get into, isn't it?
It is quite tough, but I have been very lucky. It's all about people, meeting the right people. And for instance, once I met a journalist from a national newspaper, and he was very interested in the ferry scene. So I traveled a couple of times with him. He opened my eyes to make me understand what the ferry industry was. Then I was quite a shy guy, and I remember I wrote a letter to a Swedish publisher, which was Shipax at that time. The owner was Claes Brogren, and this guy was really a mentor for me. So he said, okay, in the beginning, I don't need a photographer, but perhaps one day. And that one day came 1 year later because of the Channel Tunnel. So many ferry companies were investing in new tonnage. And he said, oh, we have Stena Line, Swedish company. They have bought or they have built a new ship for Calais Dover. And we are going to make a magazine about it. Would you like to do the pictures? And so that was my first assignment for Claes. And we eventually became good friends. And we have been traveling all over the world together. And so this guy was so important for me because he wanted to have the best photography, but also creative photography, not just a ship, but a ship in a certain setting with light, with composition. And he had really this feeling for good photography. And without him, I would not be where I am now.
I think that's what sets you apart to me. You could argue anyone can take a picture of a ship, but taking a creative, different picture of a ship, to standing at a ship coming towards you in the front quarter, the shot that everyone takes, but, just going onto your kind of social media and look at some of your pictures, they're just amazing. And sometimes the ship is just a small part of the scene, it's not necessarily the dominant part. But ferries were your kind of starting point then. That's where you started out. And as you kind of grew in that area, you then moved into cruise as well? Or was that a deliberate kind of move, or was it just an evolution of what you were doing?
In the beginning, honestly, when we were sailing along the Isle of Wight in the Solent and so on, we saw these cruise ships, and then we said on board, never in my life I will be on a cruise ship. Eventually, I've done more than 200 different cruise ships in my career. So never say never. But it was some natural movement. Suddenly, I had the opportunity to be on a small cruise ship, and I liked it. And I was fascinated because when I started as a freelancer, it was also the time when new ships were built, and each year they became bigger and more sophisticated. So there was a huge opportunity for a photographer to find work on these ships. And I was fascinated by the architecture and how all these things worked on board. So it was really, I was very happy. And so I pushed Claes Brogren. I said, yes, I also want to do the cruise ships. And eventually we traveled together on one. And suddenly, I could get on more ships. And that's how it went.
What about composition? You mentioned that before. I mean, as Alistair says, anyone can take a picture of a ship, probably an average picture, and it's okay. But the one that sticks in my mind, we just saw it before we started the interview with yourself, was the one you took I think it was an Arctic setting, and you can see the bow of a cruise liner just poking out. That's all you can see is the bow. But that image is quite arresting. But also the fact that you could plan to get that image. I mean, what came first, the idea for the image, or was it just good luck?
It was on a Ponant ship in Antarctica, an expedition cruise ship. And there was a fantastic Captain David Marionneau, and really one of the best captains I've ever had, because he had a meeting on the first day of the cruise, and he said, what do you want? What do you want to realize? And I explained my vision. I don't want just the ship. I want really to have the ship in the landscape, that people can understand how impressive it is. And he said, okay, we will do that together. And so once in a while, he offered to me the possibility to be in a Zodiac and to follow the ship, for instance, in that landscape. And he said, really, sometimes at 5 o'clock in the morning, he called me in my cabin. I said, look, come to the bridge. Let's discuss this. And then he was in his pajamas. I was in my pajamas on the bridge discussing, look, this place is beautiful. We have beautiful icebergs. Perhaps it's a good idea to put the Zodiac in the water. And then, and so we did that. But not only I was on the water, but he also felt what he had to do as a captain. So I did not ask him to go behind that iceberg. He did it because he understood the photography. So that's really brilliant to have such a person.
Yeah, and with your permission, we'll share that image on our social media. It's such an amazing image. And what kind of stands out to me is, you're in Antarctica, you're surrounded by massive icebergs, you've moved away from your place of safety, the ship, you're in a small inflatable boat, there's wildlife around, no doubt, and polar bears kind of peering over your shoulder and whatever it might be, but just getting that shot, all the planning that's gone onto it on the bridge, the actual physical, you being in the right place, the ship being in the right place, not being eaten by a polar bear, there's an awful lot that's gone into that shot, but how it came out is just amazing, and I'm sure probably worth every moment of that planning.
Absolutely. One thing, there are no polar bears in Antarctica, so that was safe. But the penguins were swimming around, so that was quite spectacular too.
Wow. Showing my lack of knowledge about nature there. Ask me one about ferries and I'll be better probably. But yes, apologies for that.
But it's amazing to have such people who understand what I want. And sometimes I also work on ships where I have no communication with the captain, or where the captain say, I can't do that, I have to ask permission to headquarters, I can't give you an authorization for that. So I also have been in Antarctica on another ship where I wanted to do something and they simply said, no, it's not possible. So yeah, cooperation is really the key to such pictures.
The whole kind of Antarctic, Arctic, Greenland type cruise thing is really taken off in recent years. We're seeing ever more kind of numbers of small expedition cruise ships being built to go to these type of environments. You've been lucky enough to experience that kind of many times. What's your thoughts on kind of tourism to these areas? Do you think it's good to spread the word, or do you think there are risks in terms of safety risks of ships down in these parts and also environmental concerns?
So ships that are not expedition ships that are not built to sail in icy conditions. So you have like ships of 2,000, 3,000 passengers, and they leave Ushuaia and they go to Antarctic. They can't drop their passengers on land, so it's just a scenic cruise. But I wonder, okay, is that necessary? What if something happens? There is no capacity to evacuate a couple of thousands of people. So that's my concern. Then you have the other category of ships, the expedition ships. They are built for polar destinations. They really have a very strict safety culture, all the procedures. I don't see any problem there. Then on the environmental part, most of them, well, they have to now, by regulation, they have to use MDO, marine diesel oil.
So lower sulfur fuel, basically, yeah.
Yeah, and the ships are modern, so with low emission. And the only thing I'm concerned about is that too many people might go. Now we have passed the 100,000 passenger bar in Antarctica. It's per year, per season. It's a lot of people. You don't see it when you are there. You think you are alone in the world. But yeah, I wonder how much this can grow.
The people and their stories. This is Full Ahead, the podcast about ships and shipping.
Can I just cast your mind back? Because I'm with you. I used to take pictures of the steam packet ships coming into Hesha when I was a lad, when I was at school. The Ben McCreed, the original, the Mark III Ben McCreed steam turbine, and also Lady of Man, Mona's Queen, and then very distinctive shapes. They're quite sort of good-looking ships, proper seagoing ships. What do you think about the change in design of ships? We saw the Stena Futura and the Stena Connector recently, but compared to the old style ships. I think the other day we posted, didn't we, on our social channels about Louagie
Yeah,
3. It's its final ferry service this year. 50 years of service coming to an end, and I'm sure the one that will replace it probably won't look exactly as the one that's about to be retired. What's your thought?
Well, they change. For instance, when I look at the expedition ships, I think there are really beautiful ships. The ships you mentioned, the Stena Connecta, Stena Futura, I don't like it with these rotor sails, but it's reality. It's reality. Like 100 years or more than 100 years ago, it was reality that a ship was looking good if it had a lot of funnels and if a lot of smoke came out of it. So it changes.
Going back to those early days, that photograph that won you your first competition, do you remember what that photograph was of?
Honestly, it was my two sisters on the typewriter on the terrace of our garden, and I was on the first floor, just like an aerial view of two girls typing together. So
Nothing to do with ships at all then?
Nothing to do with ships at all. No.
And with technology these days, I mean, photographers, I wonder if it's harder and harder to be a photographer because everyone's got a camera in their pocket now, and the quality of those cameras is improved, and anyone can own a drone. And is it more difficult for a professional photographer now to compete with these amateurs who years ago would have had trouble on the quality side?
Absolutely, it is an issue, and I had to adapt, and I can see that my total workload, photography, is only 30%, 25-30%. The rest is writing, is organizing a ferry conference. It's a lot of other things. I give for Ponant, I work like 3 months per year now on this icebreaker. I give workshops photography for the guests. I learn them how to work with their smartphone, how to make better pictures with their smartphone. So it's a more social job. So I am still a photographer, but I'm also the teacher on board. So it allows me to travel to these remote destinations, but not totally as a photographer who makes only pictures. I can make pictures, but my real task on board is to teach people.
Yeah, like many of these things, there maybe isn't money in photography, but there's money around photography. You can make money by doing things around it in a way. So lecturing and whatever else. Yeah.
And I always say, like, Ponant, it's a French company, but you have a lot of English-speaking guests on board and Chinese and whatever. But why do I have this job? First, because I'm a photographer and I have built my network with them, but also because I speak English and fluent French. So because the skills of the language are as important as the photography.
And what are your plans going forward? Are you looking to just do more of the same, or have you got kind of new avenues you're looking towards? You've never photographed really kind of commercial shipping apart from ferries. You're not into bulk carriers or container ships, or that's not your bag, no?
No, what I do want to do, so now I live in Ghent. Next month I moved back to Ostend after 25 years. I'm going back to the roots. I found a crazy apartment on the 27th floor of the only building that has its own Wikipedia page. So it's a very crazy building. So it's sea view and harbor view and city view. So I will be really I will see miles away. I will see the ships, the pilot station. And why do I do that? Because I want to go back to my origins, and I want to do a big maritime exhibition. Not so much about ships, but more about my love for the sea. It will be a very artistic project. I'm talking about 27 or 28, but I find that I need to be there to realize this exhibition.
My passion when I was younger was whitewater kayaking, and we used to go out to the Alps to go whitewater kayaking every year. And I can remember distinctly coming into Ostend on the Prince Philip back in the day. As a ferry company, we looked at that port and a project that didn't come to fruition in the end. But I've got some fond memories of Ostend too. It's an interesting place. It feels like it should have a ferry service, really, doesn't it?
So it sounds like you're about to embark on another project, which will probably result in many thousands of photographs, no doubt. But going back over your career, are there any that stand in or come out to your mind as something that you were really proud to achieve, or perhaps something that just came from good luck? The light was in the right place, or the sea did something, and that you remember distinctly, one that stands out maybe?
I remember one thing. One day I get an email from a Japanese cruise company And the email said, look, we found your website. And we only have one ship, and we send it on a world cruise. And we are looking for a photographer who can follow the ship. And you can decide the budget, and you can decide what you need, and you can decide where you want to take pictures. So the ship was going first from the Mediterranean, along the North Sea, into the Baltic Sea, to Helsinki, then back to the Norwegian fjords, and then to Ireland. And so that was it. And I could say, okay, I want a helicopter in Helsinki. I want a Zodiac in that Norwegian fjord. And that's the budget. And they said, okay, that's fine for us. And say, yeah, but guys, I don't know you. Can we have a telephone call? No, because we don't speak English. So we just do it via email. And I say, look, I am a freelancer, one-man company. My finances are not so good. Can you please already pay something? They just paid almost everything upfront.
It sounds like your dream job, this.
The trust. And it was a crazy job. So suddenly I was flying around in a helicopter in Helsinki, and then I had to quickly fly over to Oslo and to Bergen, and then I had a hire car, and then I drove to the fjord, and then amazing. So online you book all these things, and I remember there was a night of the Euro Song Contest. So I was sitting alone in my car driving on a way that I had never been before, and I knew I had to arrive in a hotel at midnight, but at 5 o'clock in the morning the guy was going to pick me up with his boat, and he was there, and I didn't know that guy, but at 5 o'clock I saw the Zodiac coming. Hello, here I am. Amazing stories.
As you were going through that process, thinking back to as a child, I mean, did you ever imagine when you started out in this photographing ferries and cruise ships kind of career, did you ever imagine you'd be doing what you're doing today?
I had that dream, but it was a very vague dream. Yeah, just call myself a maritime photographer. But what I really like is to be on the water, to have that contact with shipping, and that's my happy place. For instance, also I did my military service at the rescue helicopters. That served me so well in my later career, because I have been flying a lot with helicopters. And so I know the language. I know how to talk to the pilot, to see what I can do. So many coincidences. So I'm extremely grateful for all these beautiful coincidences in my life.
Most people, if you look back over your lives, you can go back to maybe 1 or 2 points in time where you can say, if that hadn't have happened, I might be doing something else. And it sounds like the company in Cowes, the Isle of Wight based photography firm who encouraged you into this, and then Klaus Brogan from Ship Packs, who kind of took you under his wing. Those two, if you hadn't written that letter, if you hadn't kind of made that contact in the Solent, you might well be an engineer, Mike.
But I know another example is, for instance, when I was still in the army, I was already taking pictures of ships and ferries, and there was that magazine in the UK, Ships Monthly. And I say, okay, let's try it and send some transparencies and see, perhaps they will publish it. And suddenly they published a double page with only my pictures. And there was actually a picture of the Nord-Pas-de-Calais, a French train ferry. And the sealing guy from Antwerp, who was representing the company, when it was published, called me. Oh, that's a nice picture. I would like to buy it. And perhaps we can meet because I'm interested in your work. And so because of that, I was introduced into sealing. And all these little things that happen. So I'm a very bad commercial guy. I can't sell myself, but eventually I'm always arriving where I want to be.
And maybe, as you just said, it's not you selling yourself, it's your photographs that sell you. And I think that's what you just proved with that story there. And, you know, if our listeners want to see your work, and I'm sure they're going to be intrigued to really see what we've been talking about, how can they see what you do? Your Instagram account? Have you got a Facebook account, a website?
Yeah, the Instagram account is the best place. And I have a website as well, but the Instagram account that's updated more often than my website.
Thank you very much. I mean, fantastic imagery. And I've been following your work for years, but certainly I think as we're trying to do the podcast as well, you've certainly helped shine a light on maritime, the very different lives that go on, the captains that you've met over the years. I mean, do you think that the attitudes have changed, that people are perhaps more interested and more aware of the need for ships and shipping?
That's a difficult question. When I look at the cruise business, for instance, there I see that a lot of people are in fact not even interested in ships. They see the cruise ships as a holiday resort on the water. The best example, when the biggest ship in the world was launched, you had this interior park with real trees and shrubs, and the cabins facing the park were more expensive than the cabins facing the ocean.
Wow.
So that says something about what people want on ships. So the ships are a detail, in fact. And it has also become more difficult to see ships. I remember as a small boy with my father, we went to Zeebrugge. We could walk on the pier. We could almost touch the ships. And now with the ISPS, it's almost impossible. Ships are something far away. Ports are closed, are fenced off. So it's more difficult to create maritime awareness.
Yeah, that's true. I can remember taking pictures of ferries in my early days of the career, and you could stand in places that, you simply can't stand today. Places that are either washed away with the tide or, restricted access. So I guess it's much harder to be a maritime photographer today than it was maybe 20 years ago. I
remember there was the visit of the QE2 in Zeebrugge. And so I had a Renault 5 small car, and I just went into the container. So the ship was along the container terminal. And I said, okay, that's an opportunity. If I climb up the container crane, I might have a good aerial picture, because there were no drones at that time. And I just came to the gate and say hi, and in the local dialect, and I say, okay, you just go through. And I went into the container crane, I took the elevator without asking, and I was walking upstairs and nobody said anything. Nowadays, they would call the anti-terrorist brigade. You'd
be arrested very quickly on the spot, I think.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. For anyone thinking about following their dream, whether it be photography or anything else, you followed your dream and it's worked. Any advice for listeners who are thinking, could I make this work?
It is always very important to speak out what you want and to decide, this is what I want. And even if it's a bit vague, but just, I think it's so important to, if for instance, you start a family life, you want to buy a house, you have to express, I want to buy a house, I want to have children, this and that. It's the same with a dream. I want to become this. And then it continues automatically. I believe in that.
Yeah, I get you kind of actually vocalizing what you want to do and where you want to be. And if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up somewhere else, as they say. So absolutely.
Yeah. And always work with passion and love. So work is never an issue for me. I love my work. Actually, I will become 65 this year. And my insurance company called me, are you going to retire? And I said, what are you talking about? So no, not at all. I want to have fun for another couple of years at least. Yeah.
Why would you give up on lots of free cruises around all sorts of amazing parts of the world? Yeah, absolutely. I would stick with it for a while longer yet, Mike.
I'm paid to go on cruises.
Even better.
If you ever need some helpers, by the way, there's two people. I mean, Alice has got his shorts and he's all ready to go. So.
Yeah, we can carry your camera bag anywhere you want, Mike. It's no problem at all. But look, I'm sure you'll be an inspiration to some people listening, and we'll share links to your pictures, your Instagram site through our social media so people can see just what we're talking about in terms of these shots. And we look forward to seeing plenty more in the future.
Thank you so much. Very nice.
They say, was it a picture paints 1,000 words? And I think with certainly Mike's story, it's inspiring, isn't it? The fact that it became from a hobby to a career. Amazing.
I'd really encourage listeners to go and look at the links to Mike's social media, particularly his Instagram account. I mean, there are some fantastic pictures on there. And we'll link to the picture of the bow of the vessel of this expedition ship coming out between the icebergs. That is such an amazing picture, just the planning that went into that. No polar bears, apparently, but that's my mistake. So my nature knowledge is not quite as good as it should be.
Can't know it all, can you? We also should mention, by the way, Ferry Shipping News, the newsletter that Mike produces as well. It's free to subscribe to. Well worth it. It's a great read. Again, we'll add links and all the rest of it to our social media accounts, and some brilliant images, as Alistair says as well, that Mike's taken over the years. There was one that I saw literally a few weeks ago. It was looking down from a high-rise flat on a liner, cruise liner, and it looked like a toy yacht. It looked tiny.
Yeah, some of his angles are just amazing, and but as he said, it's still tough, even though he's a fantastic photographer, and I would say at the absolute top of his game in terms of ferry cruise kind of photography. He still can't make a living out of purely photography, but purely by selling pictures. He's got to supplement that with kind of money around photography, so by giving lectures, by getting involved in summits, and so, but also that kind of following your dream thing and vocalizing what you want at the end and saying it. And also just going back to kind of our very first podcast with Harvey kind of knowing what he wanted to do, but then writing those letters to the people that could help him do it. And the same with Mike there, writing that letter to Klaus at Shippacks about, don't you need a photographer, and it not happening immediately, but keeping at it, keeping that contact. And for anyone wanting to follow their dream, don't be afraid to approach people that can help you.
Again, it's proof every edition I think we do the podcast, we're meeting people like Mike, like Harvey, who've got a real passion for ships and shipping, which comes across loud and clear. And so thanks to Mike, and thanks to you for downloading this edition of the Full Ahead podcast. There are many more to enjoy. Just look back through our back catalogue on Spotify. Been going for nearly a year now. It's flying by. Yeah,
so you subscribe on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts. Follow us along. Plenty more exciting episodes in the pipeline, so please tune in for more.
From me, Nigel Thompson, thanks for listening.
And for me, Alice Regals, it's been a pleasure once again to be here for the Full Ahead podcast.
Thanks for downloading Full Ahead. Find us on social media or email nigel.thompson@journalist.com.